Hello, everyone, and welcome to the crash course for the curious on identity security. I'm so glad you came to join us today. We're going to introduce you to the world of identity and access management, probably a world you interact with every single day and you just don't know it, believe it or not. So we'll spend a little bit of time just doing a really low-key introduction, foundational introduction to a few identity concepts, but nothing super technical, I promise. We'll make sure we explain all of the acronyms that we talk about, but it will definitely be a story that you can relate to. So I'm Jen Kraxner. I have been in the identity industry for about 10 years as an advisor, and I now currently work at Sexetta as the Director of Market Advisory. And I am joined today by Cassie Christensen. Say hi, Cassie. Cassie is the Director of Solution Advisory at Sexetta now, but she has spent even more time in identity than I have, but with Ping and Optiv, I know. So spent tons of time advising different organizations and really learning a lot about identity, as have I for the last 10 years. So hoping to impart a lot of that knowledge on you all today. And finally, I am also joined by our third distinguished faculty today, David Lee. Say hi, David. Identity Jedi and the newest addition to Sexetta product leadership. Very excited to have him here. Comes with an even longer tenure within identity than Cassie or I have a feeling. So
I'm still young,
I know I'm aging you just a little bit, but that's okay. I'm aging us all, I have a feeling. Okay, so let's jump right in. I just want to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what we're going to cover today. Now, these are some terms that you're probably maybe have heard, maybe not. It's okay if you haven't, but you're going to learn a little bit about each of these in, again, a very relatable and low-key way. First of all, we're going to talk about some identity governance and administration topics, or IGA. We're also going to talk about privileged access management, or PAM. Yes, I said Pam, not Pan. Little Step Brothers reference. Okay. Anyway, access management as well. We'll get into some topics there, and hopefully all of these will mean something a little bit different, or maybe just a little bit more complete by the time we get through just the next, gosh, probably only 20 minutes or so. It's going to be pretty quick. So to talk to you about all of these different topics, we are going to take you on a bit of an identity journey. And specifically, this is going to be Becky's identity journey. And Becky is an employee. We're going to start at the very beginning, right? As a new employee at an organization, Becky's super excited because she just got the acceptance letter that she's able to, come in and start a new role in accounting at a new firm. We'll go with Acme. So Becky's a newly hired Acme employee. She's coming in to do work in the accounting department. Some things that happen on the back end of that, or on the front end of that, I should say, as Becky starts her onboarding process, starts to come into work. HR is doing a whole lot of work, right? HR is who we typically are communicating with when we first get hired for a job. So we find out our start date from them. Well, they're also doing a lot of work behind the scenes, entering a lot of that information into an HR system. They're making sure that Becky's all set to start being an employee at Acme. And believe it or not, here at Acme, Becky is also getting all of her access kind of predetermined for her. So because she's coming in the role that she's coming in as, and because all of that great information about Becky as an employee is going into an HR system, that information you can actually count on in order to help drive a lot of her access that she's going to need when she gets started. So we all know that when we start a new job, we need things like an email address. We need access to maybe a Zoom or some other, conferencing software, especially these days, right? We need access to maybe, Word or Excel or Office 365. So we're getting all of these things that we as employees need in order to do our job. Unfortunately, with Becky, as she gets entered into an HR system, that HR system is connected up to what we would call an IGA solution, or an identity governance and administration solution, that is able to do a lot of that work to automatically get Becky the access that she's going to need. So that includes what we would call a joiner action, because as Becky joins the organization, she needs to get provisioned a lot of this access so that she can work. And just strictly as somebody coming in as a new hire, she gets what we call birthright access. So it's essentially her birth at that organization. She will come in and get those key pieces of access that are necessary for her to get started day one as she comes on board. Now, once Becky comes on board, she's actually going to start getting into some of those systems. And to talk through that, I am going to pass it off to Cassie.
Hi, so let's recap a little bit. Becky goes to Acme and she starts filling out her information and she creates her record in the HR system. We're going to refer to that in identity terms as the authoritative source. That is the place where we're pulling data from about Becky. We're going to keep going forward and talking through her journey. So Jen outlined that. From there, Becky was placed into an IGA system and she was given birthright access. So a couple other terms, right? The IGA system, Identity Governance and Administration, that's the system that initially creates kind of her digital representation, the account that basically represents Becky's journey through their organization. From there, and all of the information that we know, she was granted some basic birthright access, right? She was put into those initial applications. So again, we now know what an IGA system is, and we know that it can handle birthright access. But I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this. When I've started jobs, I never have everything that I need. So on my first day, I get in, I sit down at my desk, and undoubtedly the second thing I try to do after I check my email is try to do something that I don't quite have access to yet. So that IGA system sticks with us. It's the place that we can go back and we can do things like request additional access. In the case of Becky, she's in accounting, and when she sat down on her first day, she realized she didn't have access to QuickBooks. And that's something that her job was going to demand. So she would go back into that system, the IGA system, and simply say, you know, I need to be able to process accounts payable inside of QuickBooks or whatever it might be. And then that system would kick off some workflows on the back end, right? So it doesn't just grant her access because she says she needs it. It checks with other members of the organization. It enforces the policy around that type of access and then grants it to her. So now she's gotten her birthright access. She's been able to complete an access request. But what does that really mean? Just because this one system knows about her and knows the other systems she's supposed to get into, does Becky know about those systems? Does she know all of the different things that she has access to? The answer might be no. And that's where access management can come into play. Access management is where things like SSO, single sign-on, live, and your ability to kind of see all of your applications in one spot. So now that Becky has all this powerful access and she's ready to get started, she can be directed. Maybe that IGA system registers her for her access management tool. She jumps in and she would see a screen. And they call them tiles or chicklets, depending on what kind of product you're working with. But you would see all the little applications that you've been granted access to. So now Becky doesn't have to go searching or asking somebody what's the URL for this, that, or the other thing. She goes to her desktop and she can see, there's my email, and go to it. And all of that's powered again on the back end by access management. Now, that's great. Becky's up and running. She's working hard. But what happens when Becky has a bit of a change in her career? To walk her through what we might call a mover action, I'll pass things over to my counterpart, David Lee.
All right. So I have to let everybody in the inside joke. So I laughed when Cassie said chicklets because I totally forgot we used to call them that. And every time I hear that word, I think of like the little pieces of gum, right? And I guess that's why they call them chicklets. Anyway, neither here nor there. All right. So Becky now has been in the organization. And she's been in accounting and she has been absolutely killing it. It's been a couple of years. She's like, hey, you know what? ready to do something a little bit different. And within the organization in Acme, they're ramping up on marketing and they need somebody to come in and handle social media. And Becky's like, wait, what? She is a social media queen. She lives for social media. So she says, I'm going to jump all over it. I want to jump into the marketing team, help manage social media, and just get better into marketing. And so with that, she necessitates a transfer. It's a job change. And we've all kind of been through there. There's a new position. You go through that, you get the new position. So when she accepts it and moves from accounting to marketing, obviously her access now needs to change. She's not going to have the same applications that she had on a day-to-day basis in accounting that she's going to have over in marketing, or at least she shouldn't. So put in the request, they go to the IGA system, they have the Identity Governance Administration system, submit for the transfer request. And both her managers will get a notification saying, hey, she's moving from accounting over into marketing. So let's figure out what access she needs to keep, what access she needs to get rid of. So during that process, we call it a mover. That would get negotiated between the managers. They'll decide which applications access she'll keep, which ones she'll get new ones. And then they'll make the IGA system will make the proper adjustments in the application. So then when she goes to her SSO on her day one as a new marketing person, her chicklets will now have changed. And instead of seeing QuickBooks and the other things she's accessed, she'll now see things like, somebody think of some good marketing software that she may use. I can think of right now. There we go. So she'll see those now, and probably still some other stuff that she generally has access to as an employee. Now, in this new role, she's managing all of social media, which is fantastic for her. She's loving it. She's learning new things. She's learning how to do organic reach. She's reaching out and doing campaigns. The social media management is going great. The followers are up. But with that comes some pretty responsibility. You know, as Aunt May recently said, with great power comes great responsibility. And you would know that if you've seen Spider-Man No Way Home. It's Aunt May that said it. And so now that she has all of this amazing responsibility managing social media accounts, she's noticing that to access this, it's not just her, but it's other as well that have to access this same social media account. And so that's considered kind of privileged, because just think if somebody got a hold of your company's social media account and they weren't really happy with the company, or just anybody got a hold of it, you kind of want to make sure that you know who's getting access to that. And so that's where we come in with privileged access management. And so the social media accounts, this Acme considers privileged and want to make sure they're tracking exactly who has access to these. So with this and using a shared account, she now has to use this privileged access management system to check in or check out the account whenever she wants to go tweet or post to LinkedIn or make a new TikTok or whatever she's doing on social media, to make sure that when she gets the actual company credentials, she's only using it for a small amount of time and then checking that back in. And making sure that Becky doesn't know the password, or anybody really knows the password. The privileged access management system is going to be rotating that password and credential, monitoring when it's checked in and checked out. So at all times, Acme can know like who has access to the social media account. In case anything does happen and somebody kind of gets into there, they can limit that usage. And so instead of tweeting out that they get a 90% discount of all their products, they can quickly delete that tweet and get rid of it and back it up, because they're using the privileged access management system to know kind of who has access to that. And so now we're going to fast forward a little bit. So she has been rocking it in the social media management. She jumps from social media management to like marketing director over a number of years, and she is just killing it. Her career has been amazing. Companies decided to go public, right? She gets a nice little share. Becky's like, you know what? I think I'm good. I've done all I wanted to do with my career. I've done what I want to do. There's some other things that I want to go accomplish. She's looking on the horizon of her life. She goes, you know what? Traveling sounds really good. I think I want to go and spend some time in Japan and just really sink in the culture. I think I'm done with this 9-to-5 life. So Becky's going to resign, right? We call this the leaver process. It's the natural kind of life cycle as you go through employees. New things come up, new positions come up, new things in your life happen when you want to leave that company. So she puts in her resignation. It's a very teary goodbye. Everybody brings the cakes and they celebrate. There's like 7 different happy hours that she goes to. She's never had that much alcohol in a week in her life. She's so happy to be going on this next journey. But on the digital side, what's going on from an identity perspective, a resignation date was set in the HR systems. We go back and think about our HR system. That's the authoritative source. That comes down to the IGA system, Identity Governance Administration system, and knows that at a certain amount of time, Becky will resign. She will no longer be an employee. And so at that point, a lot of the access that she has will be removed, right? So they would terminate her identity record, they'll remove that access. And this is done to make sure, obviously, that those accounts don't just sit out there with that access. Becky's been with the company a while. She's had an amazing career and journey. She's got a lot of access to things, and they want to make sure that that's taken care of properly. We don't want dormant accounts sitting there. Like if you didn't do this process and then, Becky's off and it's been 6 months later, she has no clue about anything that's going on in Acme Corporation. But if her accounts are still active in there, somebody can get in and be using those accounts and people would think it's actually Becky when it's not. So when the IJ system sits that, it'll deactivate all that access. Nobody can get to that account. Becky's sailed off into the sunset. She's enjoying her much earned retirement, thinking back about her amazing time at Acme. And Acme is all the safer as they've properly made sure that they've managed her access throughout her entire career. And now she's resigned, has gotten rid of that access and is ready for the next person to step up, as Becky has groomed her mentor replacements, and they will be waiting in the wings for her to step up and get the same access that Becky once had. Not the exact same access, but similar access. And that's it.
And so
there we have an amazing journey of Becky through this fictitious corporation called Acme, but we've covered a lot of identity topics in that time, right? So again, we talked about identity governance and administration. That's where Becky got her birthright access. That's the system that was talking to HR, pulling in from the authoritative source. It also handles what we call the joiner mover levers. When Becky joined, it automatically gave her birthright access. When she moved from accounting to marketing, it handled the transfer between the two so that her managers could decide what access she kept, what access she needed to get rid of. And then on her leaver process, when Becky resigned and rode off into the sunset, the IJ system was also there to make sure that on that termination date, all that access was disabled and removed. It's also where she went to handle her access requests. So if you think about, like Cassie said, on that day one, Becky was ready to get started and realized she didn't have access to QuickBooks. So she had to go to the IJ system to request for access to that. There's another part in there, certifications, you may have heard this, or quarterly business review, or there's another term that I can't think of right now that you may have heard this, but the IJ system also manages on a quarterly basis or some time frame for organizations to understand, like make sure, like, do you have the access that you're supposed to have? And maybe on your side, you've received that. You've got an email that says, hey, you need to go in, if you're a manager, and certify that these people still need this access, right? That's called certifications. It also happens in the IGA system. It's part of compliance to make sure that the access that's been granted is still accurate. Because as we've seen with Becky's journey, people don't always stay in the same position, right? And so you don't always need the same access you need on day one that you have on day 366 or 4,332, whatever it is. The point is, as you kind of grow within your career, your access levels change. And so certifications is a way to automate that process and keep up with that. We also talked about access management, right? So, authentication and single sign-on. So when you hit that little screen to know where your chicklets or tiles are, right? That's a part of access management. So when you click on it, it automatically authenticate you into that application. You notice you only had to enter one password. You didn't have to enter a bunch of different passwords. You just logged into your single sign-on provider and it authenticates you into those apps. Also authorizes you once you get to those apps to make sure that you have the right access that you need. And then multi-factor authentication, our favorite, if you've seen this in the last couple of years, has gotten really big. You go in, you're always prompted for something. It tells you to do something on your phone or it sends you a text, but it's making sure that you are indeed the person that's supposed to be authenticated. So that multi-factor stands for, two different forms. You get multi-factor or 2FA, two-factor authentication, basically just saying there's multiple ways to authenticate that you are, other than just providing the password. We want to make sure that it's really, really you. So if we tell you to enter the password and then we send a text to your phone, then more likely than not, it's actually you. And then finally, we talked about privileged access management. This is when you have accounts that are like just super, super administrative, or that you really want to have more control over. Usually when you have like shared accounts or like admin accounts to servers, you have privileged access management. And here you're going to have that in a vault where people have to check in or check out. Not one person knows the password. You want to make sure of that, so that way you're protecting your organization, because if one person has a password and all of a sudden they become a nefarious character or they just get upset with the company, like you don't want that one person to have control over such a powerful account. So you want to make sure that that is shared, right? And that the credential gets rotated. The password's not the same. Privileged access management systems do that to help organizations manage that. And so we've seen how that is used even in something like marketing with the Twitter accounts. But other examples, if you have admin accounts, if your administrators have access to all these different accounts where you can do a lot of bulk actions and serious actions to like production systems, you want to make sure that's limited of who can actually have access to that. And that's where privileged access management comes in. So we've covered kind of like those three main pillars, right? To kind of get you started as a crash course to identity. There's so much more to that. But if you understand those simple things and that life cycle that we took you through, Becky, you pretty much have a good understanding of identity access management. You're well on your way, becoming an expert, like these two ladies that I have with me here today. There's a lot more to dig into, but that's the gist of it for a crash course.
For a crash course. Thank you all, and thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.